What is up, guys? It's your old pal Bobgar, the Warbarian, and today we're looking at a land destruction reanimator deck, a Mardu Reanimator, if you will. This is a priced up version that I've been running in the tournament practice lobby just for now. I might try it through a league eventually, or I might try tweaking it and putting it through a league. But I'm pretty happy with how this build looks and plays. There's some choices that I'm not 100% sure on that I'll mention as I go through the deck. But I think this is about the way I would want to run it. And so I'm going to start going through the deck, and we're going to start by looking at the land base. It's a 3-color land base, a lot of dual lands, basically two kind of packages, I would almost say. There's the fast lands, including Black Cleaves Close, which are black-red. We run a full play set of those. 3 Inspiring Vantage, which are red-white, and then 3 Concealed Courtyard, which are white-black. These we can't fetch for, we just have to draw them, but fast lanes are pretty good in the deck. 3 is really where most of the meat of our deck is. We could play Obzedat for fair. Sometimes we want to play on barrel rights on turn 4, so it's nice if our turn 4 land doesn't come into play tap land. But we do, so about half of our lands, I think slightly over half, exactly 10 of our lands are fast lanes. We do run a fetch land package as well, with 3 Bloodstained Mire, 1 of each of our shocks, so Blood Crypt, Godless Shrine, and Sacred Foundry, and then 1 of each of our basics. Usually we'll be fetching our shocks, as long as we don't feel like it's going to hurt our life too much. The basics are more in there against decks that are going to try to path to exile us, or if we're against Blood Moon and we have to crack a fetch in response and get the correct basic for whatever we need to do. I guess Mountain wouldn't need to be in there for that, but that's the general idea. So that's the land base. That's how it looks. It's a pretty expensive land base. I mean, not the most expensive in Modern, certainly, but not cheap. And then let's move on to the 1-drops. So first off, let's take a look at the interaction. Your main turn 1 plays are going to be either Inquisition of Kozilek or Faithful Suiting, but Inquisition of Kozilek is great interaction, takes your opponent off your game plan, slows them down, hits almost every deck in Modern. There are a few decks it's pretty weak against, like Tron, but for the most part it's very good. And we run so many cards like Faithful Suiting that let us draw cards and discard cards that when we get these in the late game, they're not really that big a deal because we'll discard them to Faithful Suiting or Cathartic Reunion or Tormenting Voice or something. We also have 2 Lightning Axes. Lightning Axe does 5 damage to a creature for 1 mana, but you have to discard a card as an additional cost. Otherwise, it costs like 6, which we'll basically never play it for. I mean, I guess never say never. It could happen, but generally we're discarding one of our big threats to get this one out. Or just a Faithful Suiting that we can flash back anyway, or something like that. So that's, and then I think I already mentioned Faithful Suiting, but it's probably one of the most important cards to the deck. Draw 2, discard 2, and then it has flashback at 3, so it really lets you dig pretty far through your deck in a single card. You dig, it's basically a draw 4, discard 4, and we don't care about discarding things. A lot of our things either have flashback or we want in our graveyard so we can reanimate. So very good card in the deck. The 2-drop is completely based on these effects that as an additional cost, we discard a couple cards and then we redraw the same number. So they're card neutral, obviously tempo negative. They cost us mana, but they allow us to filter through our deck, get our reanimates in hand, and get our threats into the graveyard. So that's kind of what this does. So either Tormenting Voice is discard 1, draw 2. And so we'd either discard, hopefully discard Ashen Rider or Woodfall Primus. Sometimes it's worth it to discard Obzedat. Sometimes it's worth it to discard Lingering Souls or Unburial Rites. And then Cathartic Reunion is exactly the same thing, except it's a draw 3, but you have to discard 2 to do it. So the one place these really hurt us is against decks that have a lot of counter spells. I mean, in some ways, the discard is almost the most important part of them in a lot of matches, but if we don't have our Reanimate in hand or haven't found it or just haven't found a threat yet, we do need them to also draw us towards the pieces we need. So can't completely rely on them just for that. So yeah, hopefully we don't run into too many counter spells. The 3-drop spot is interesting. Lingering Souls can almost be put at the 2-drop. Probably more often than not, you're discarding it and then playing it for 2. I would say one of the most powerful lines in the deck is turn 1 Faithful Suiting into turn 2 Lingering Souls into turn 3 Footsteps. Just turn 1 you lose a little bit of tempo. Turn 2 you put in 2 chump blockers. Turn 3 you can take over the game with a big threat if you discarded Lingering Souls plus Woodfall Primus or something like that. And so that's kind of like one of the ideal draws, I think. But yeah, Lingering Souls you will often play for fair as well. Obviously 4 1/1s are better than 2 1/1s, but but you can usually think about it as a 2-drop instead of a 3-drop. Footsteps of Goryeo is probably the most important card in the deck, and for those who don't know how this deck works, basically we have a bunch of creatures that have come into play effects and also effects when they die. So Footsteps of the Goryeo actually triggers all 4 of these cards twice, or rather all 8 of these cards. Ashen Rider, when it comes into play, you exile, and when it dies, you exile again. So exile, when I say exile, I mean you exile target permanent. So you can exile lands, you can exile creatures, you can exile whatever you want, probably on your opponent's side since it just exiles it permanently. So Footsteps of the Goryeo plus Ashen Rider is basically an exile 2 unless they path it or something weird when it's on the field. Woodfall Primus is the same kind of thing. It only hits non-creature permanents, but you use Footsteps of the Goryeo on Woodfall Primus, comes into play, you get to destroy a non-land permanent. End of turn, you have to sacrifice it. It doesn't have a leaves play effect, but it has a persist effect, which means when you sacrifice it, it comes back in as a 5/5 instead of a 6/6 trample, because it gets a -1/-1 counter, and then it's destroy target non-creature spell triggers again, so you get to destroy a second non-creature spell. So a lot of times it's like turn 3, destroy 2 of your lands, put in a 5/5 trample, and that obviously is a game-breaking effect. Doesn't just win on the spot, but it puts your opponent super far behind, and then you also have a 5/5 out, which is a very fast clock. That's kind of the 3-drop. Occasionally you'll have to exile Obzedat too. Obzedat is a 5/5 that you certainly could play for fair. It's only 5 mana, and the deck can get to 5 mana pretty easily. But it's a 5/5 that when it comes into play, your opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And at your end step, you can exile it, and it will come back in with haste at the beginning of your next upkeep, basically, I think. Right? Upkeep? Yep. So this works well with Goryeo because as long as you stack the triggers right, you will exile this before you have to sacrifice it, so you just get to keep it permanently. So it's only a 2 mana cost reduction. It's not the most important combo in the deck, but it's nice to have in the deck just in case they shut off your graveyard somehow. It's also just a really good card. It finishes games out pretty quickly. So I like it as a fair option if we don't hit our Reanimator, if our opponent's shutting off our graveyard. That also happens to work really well with Footsteps of the Goryeo anyway. All right, so there's that. And then we're also running 4 Unburial Rites as additional bring back from the graveyard effect. I thought about Makeshift Mannequin, which also works really well here because basically when you target these things, they get their secondary effect anyway, and actually makes it hard to path them, which is kind of nice. But I went with Unburial Rites because you can play it twice. It helps us a lot in grindier matchups where you really want to play it twice to force out 2 counter spells for the price of 1 card in hand. And yeah, it's just a really good reanimate. You'll usually dump it in your graveyard, play it for its flashback. Another nice thing about it is we don't care if we dump it in our graveyard. But yeah, you dump it in your graveyard, play it for its flashback, get back one of our big creatures. So super nice reanimate spell. And then a 1 of Gurmag Angler. I kind of already talked about all our threats, so I'll probably skip them over here. 1 of Gurmag Angler just lets us play the game a little bit more fair. We're going to be dumping tons of things in our graveyard we don't care about delving away. And so a lot of times late game, you can just pay 1 or 2 mana, get rid of all of the Tormenting Voices, Cathartic Reunions, and fetch lands and things in your graveyard, and just put a Gurmag Angler in play. And that ends games very quickly too. A lot of decks are not well set up to beat it. And so I was going to talk a little bit about the choices I'm not entirely happy with and I'm not sure what to do with. Well, I mentioned Unburial Rites. I'm not 100% sure whether that's worth it over Makeshift Mannequin. Makeshift Mannequin, like I said, synergizes pretty well with these creatures, actually. And the fact that it's instant speed can be pretty important in certain matchups. And it can also be important against some of the grinding matchups, especially Control, because you can put something in end of turn. If they counter it, you can just do something else on your main phase after their counter is down, after their mana is used up. I also am not sure about the split of Obzedats and Gurmag Anglers. Obzedat in general, I just haven't played with a lot yet. This is the newest addition to the deck. I saw people playing it in Goryo's Vengeance versions, and it looked like it would be good here too, so I figured put it in, see how it plays. But a lot of times I think, drawing 1 Gurmag Angler is important, and if you want to draw 1, having 2 might make sense, but the problem is if you get 2 in hand, it feels pretty bad, so I don't know what the right split of Gurmag Anglers to Obzedat Ghost Councils is. The other thing I'm not entirely happy with is I just don't like Lightning Axe that much, which is maybe a bad thing to say. But what I really want is Collective Brutality as a 2-drop. Just a little priced out for me. Not for the deck, obviously. This is a super priced up deck, but I don't own the Collective Brutalities. Crossing my fingers, hoping they go down $5 at rotation. I don't know how likely it is since they don't really see any standard play anyway, but there is some chance that somebody will have them in their standard collection and be like, oh, I guess I don't need these anymore, and sell them off. Like I picked up Collected Companies for $5 last rotation when those went way down, and then they went back up to like 10 to 20. Anyway, so that's the main deck. That's how the deck plays. You can kind of see. Ideally, turn 3, we destroy 2 lands or get the threats off the board. Sometimes we'll just play a Ghost Council for fair and start the beats. And then sideboard, 2 Bojuka Bog, get rid of opponent's graveyard. So we're in kind of another deck that also uses graveyard. Doesn't affect ours. I put in a Pithing Needle. I'm not sure about it, but does help us against certain things. We can blind name fetch lands. We can name planeswalkers. We do have a pretty good package to get rid of planeswalkers since both Ashen Rider and Woodfall Primus do hit them, but nice to have a little bit of extra interaction there. Getting locked under Liliana sucks. 3 Fragmentize to deal with artifacts and enchantments. This comes in a lot against white decks because Rest in Peace is one of our hardest cards to beat. Single Lightning Axe for more removal. I'm going to clump up Murderous Cut, a Delve card with which removes 2. This could even be main boardable, but I put it in the sideboard. I think the big reason is we really need... Our removal usually is most useful early in the game, and Delve takes a little while to turn on. 2 Dragon's Claw against like burn decks and such help us stay in a little longer. 2 Slaughter Games against combo decks. Exile a card with a given name and can't be countered. Pretty good against combo decks. Sometimes even good against control if you know what they have and you want to stop their game plan, especially if they only have a couple win conditions. And then a package of various creatures we can put in various matchups. Sundering Titan is really interesting. If your opponent's running a lot of colors, it's pretty good. We're not running that many actual basic land types because we're running so many fast lands. So a lot of times this will get our opponent for 4 lands when we Footsteps of the Goryo it in and only kill 1 of ours or something. So I like this guy. Not quite enough to put him in the main board. I had him in the main board in another version, but I took him out and decided to go with the Obzedats instead. Hornet Queen is really good against creature decks. You get to put out 4 1/1s Death Touch Flying with Footsteps of the Goryo, and that just wrecks Zoo. And then with the normal Reanimator, it's good too. You just get to keep the 2/2 flyer around. And then Shieldred is kind of this recurring reanimate. I like it a lot in matchups where you don't have to... I can probably... Let's scale this up a little bit. I like it in matchups where you're pretty sure your opponent's not going to have removal. And so that's the deck. I'm going to jump into some games. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.